Hello and welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Welcome back to Fallout New Vegas, where today we're going to be ranking all of the pistols in Fallout New Vegas based on their design and how well they fit into the Fallout world. Not necessarily how good they actually are, because most of the pistols in this game are pretty good. It was also really hard to rank these in terms of design, because most of these are really solid, especially compared to some of the other entries that we have in the Fallout games. So let's begin. We have 18 of these to cover, and our very first one, coming in at our number 18 spot, is the 12.7mm pistol. Now, the 12.7mm pistol honestly doesn't look that bad for a fantasy design. This pistol isn't really based off of any pistol in particular. The closest would be something like a Bergman pistol, and even then it's not really that close. It doesn't really quite look like that, nor does it function like that when you see it actually being used in-game. This one has never really been one of my favorite pistols in terms of looks. In terms of stats, it's actually very solid. You can throw like hollow points into this and it just rips right through anything that doesn't have armor, which is really nice. It can get a suppressor on there, which does work. It's a very big chunky gun then, which is kind of funny if you put the suppressor on there, which does kind of make sense. A 12.7mm pistol would be 50 caliber. That would be the conversion from metric to imperial. So that would be a pretty substantial pistol. Now, what type of 50 caliber, we don't know. This was originally based off of the 14mm pistol that showed up in the very first Fallout game, and didn't really seem to be based on anything either. It was more of just a fantasy design in that game. So it would later come back into New Vegas, and it's more of a late game pistol that's actually pretty solid. Lil Devil is a little bit more squished down, a little bit more manageable pistol. This came with the Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC. You can buy this from Mick and Ralph. It has some of the best stats out of any of the pistols, which is really good. It is bugged, weirdly enough, in game, where it's supposed to be a holdout weapon no matter what, but it's bugged to where it doesn't count as a holdout weapon no matter what. I don't know what got mixed up in the code there, what got put where, but yeah, that one should be better than what it actually is in the game, and it's not. Still has really high damage, still has really high DPS. It uses a very similar model to the 12.7mm, just a little bit more squished down, so a little bit more manageable. Still not necessarily one of my favorite pistol designs, but definitely one of the strongest pistols in the game. Coming in at our number 16 spot, we have the 5.56 pistol. This was also added with the Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC. This one was the common version of that gun, which will be showing up here in a second. So the 5.56 pistol is based off of the Blade Runner revolver, and this gun has actually appeared in a couple of the Fallout games. In Fallout 1 and 2, this was in the game as well, in that it was the 223 pistol, which 223 and 5.56, once again, metric and imperial to some extent. There's a little bit of difference between those, but they're basically the same. It is a very cool looking revolver. I do kind of like this design, even though it's a little bit strange, because I think the original one actually had 2 triggers. Not really sure what the second trigger would do, if it was just to set the first trigger so that you would have a nicer trigger pull on it, or if it was designed with something else in mind from the movie. Either way, it's kind of a cool gun, and it's actually fairly solid in New Vegas as well. It does pretty good damage and pretty good damage per second. It uses one of the most common rounds in the game, and 5.56 has some of the most variety to it in terms of ammunition, which is actually quite good. You can put 223 into this, you can put the standard 5.56, you can put armor-piercing, hollow points, match-grade rounds into this. This isn't really based on any gun in particular, although I do believe it's using a Smith & Wesson model of revolver. That was actually covered up by this. You see this in a lot of other sci-fi movies, especially from the 80s. Like this one had a Smith & Wesson revolver in it, and then you see something like RoboCop's gun being like a Beretta 93 that's been expanded on to make it giant. So more stuff just put on there to make it fit the setting a little bit better. Coming in at number 15, we have that gun. This is the unique version, or I guess the first version that was in the game, because that gun was in the game before the 5.56 pistol was in. You can get this one in Novak. You can steal this one really easily if you would like, and it's pretty solid. It just has better stats than the 5.56 pistol. It is more worn. You can actually see the wear and tear on this one a little bit more, where the standard 5.56 pistol is a bit better taken care of. It still has the blacked out paint on it. It hasn't really been rubbed away like that gun. I don't know why this gun wasn't in Fallout 4, because we have synths in that one. There's even a challenge in New Vegas for shooting so many robots with either that gun or the 5.56 pistol. I don't know why that wasn't in Fallout 4 now that I'm thinking about it. That is very strange. Coming in at our number 14 spot, we have the weathered 10mm pistol. Now, this is the more beat up 10mm pistol. This one has had pretty much all of the paint removed from it. It looks like it's been kind of sandblasted, so it's the very basic version of the 10mm pistol. And this one isn't bad. The 10mm pistol has shown up in quite a lot of the Fallout games, pretty much all the Fallout Fallout games besides like Tactics. It was the standard pistol of the US military. This one is heavily based off of something like a Desert Eagle, which is interesting because we had a Desert Eagle in the first game, but we haven't really gotten that in some of the later games, really any of the first-person games for some reason. It's a decent sci-fi design. I do like this version of the 10mm pistol, probably the best out of all the 10mm designs that we've had throughout the Fallout games. This is just a complete copy from Fallout 3. The weathered 10mm is pretty decent. It's also one of the unique weapons that can actually have all the attachments put on it, even though it is a unique weapon. It's just not coded that way. It's the same thing with like the Mercenary's grenade rifle, so that's cool. Coming in at my number 13 spot, we have the regular 10mm pistol. I do think this one looks a little bit better than the weathered one. It's a little bit less beat up, even though it does statistically have slightly worse stats than the weathered 10mm pistol. So there's not really a reason to use it if you have that one. It does have some really good upgrades though, where you can put a laser on this to make it more accurate, a suppressor if you would like, and an extended mag. All of those fit the gun pretty well. And the 10mm pistol, once again, is a pretty cool fantasy design for the Fallout series. Now, from this point on, all of these guns actually look and function pretty well. We don't really have much more fantasy designs, at least to that much of an extent, in the rest of these guns, which is rather surprising. Coming in at my number 12 spot, we have the hunting revolver. The hunting revolver is very big, it's very powerful, and I do really like that it's in the game. This is one of the few guns that can actually have a scope on it. It has a scope on it by default, and honestly, I don't really care for that look too much on a big revolver like this. It's not a bad thing, and it does make sense to put a scope on a revolver like this, especially something shooting 45-70, because that is a massive round. This would pack substantial firepower. It kind of does make sense for like the Ranger veterans to be carrying this thing around, because even though it probably wouldn't be all that pleasant to shoot, it would do a lot of damage to anything that you hit with it. And a big old 5-shot revolver, especially using something like 45-70 if you're carrying around a brush gun, makes a whole lot of sense because that one's also 45-70. Really does fit the setting quite well. It's just not really one of my favorite guns, so that's why it is a little bit lower here. Coming in at my number 11 spot, we've got the police pistol. This is a .357 revolver that you can find in Dead Money. This is what the security usually carried around, which does actually pretty much fit. There was a lot of police pistols that were like this that hung around for a very long time in US history, where something small like this would make a lot of sense. Having a little .357 or a .38 special revolver like this, especially for a gun that you probably aren't going to be using the vast majority of the time, but you need to be carrying around something on you, this does make sense. I do really like this. This is a double action swing out cylinder revolver, which also fits the Wild West theme because these things have been around for a very long time, a lot longer than you might think, since about the 1880s, so it would fit perfectly well into Fallout. It kind of goes along with the Old West theme. This is modeled off of the Colt New Service revolver, I believe, and it's a pretty good little pistol. It's actually very strong in-game. In terms of stats, it's very, very good. It's actually quite solid. It's just that most of the time people aren't going to grab this right away. They're going to go to Dead Money later on. They're going to go there at like level 20 plus, and at that point you may already have better pistols than this. If you rush Dead Money though, this one's actually pretty good. It's better than a lot of other handguns, especially since .357 rounds are pretty common, and you can put in things like .38 into this, which is pretty cool, which also makes sense because of you can do that in real life too. Coming in at number 10, we have the Silence 22 pistol. This one is one of my absolute favorite pistols. I absolutely love this thing, and it fits the Wasteland quite well. Things like 22 target pistols would probably fit into the Wasteland really well. Now, this one's modeled off of the Ruger Mark IV, I believe, or Ruger Mark III. Really, the Mark 1, 2, 3, and 4 all look fairly similar to one another, and they're all based off of the same design. There is suppressors for these too, and I believe there's a couple internally suppressed versions of this gun, so it being suppressed makes total sense. It shoots the 22 round. It's one of the few guns that does that, which is pretty cool. 22s are surprisingly rare in the Wasteland. I'm not sure why that is, and I kind of wish that you could just buy big old bulk boxes of them. Unfortunately, that doesn't really happen too often in the game. Usually you can find like some small cases of 22 ammo, and it's usually not very much, and vendors don't really sell it all that often. So it makes it kind of awkward to be using in the game. Overall, statistically, this one is one of the weaker pistols, which you would kind of expect, although it does hold a lot of rounds and its crit chance is really high. So it does fit like a stealthy backup pistol or a stealthy, assassin build a lot better than some of the other pistols that we have in the game. I think it's pretty cool, but it is a little bit weak, which is sort of what skews my opinion to put it on the lower end of this list. Coming in at number 9, we have the 9mm pistol. This one is based off of the Browning high-powered pistol, which is quite an old design. This one comes from the 1930s, and it was quite an advanced design for the time. since this was a high-capacity 9mm pistol. The real version also had adjustable sights, which would have been cool to see in the game, but I don't know how that really could have worked since there's not really a button to do that in New Vegas. If we ever get an update to this game or something like that, that would be a really cool feature to kind of put into the game. Either way, this is pretty much the starting pistol that you get, and this one's actually pretty decent. Even for a starting pistol, this one has good damage, it has good range, you can spam it out very fast. 9mm is super common to find in the Wasteland, and the mods for it kind of make sense. The extended mag is pretty cool. The scope on it is a little bit weird, although, again, you could do that, and the way that it's mounted onto the pistol kind of makes sense. It's just a little bit of a strange thing to want to do that for something like a 9mm pistol. At number 8, we have the 357 Magnum Revolver. This one is the quintessential cowboy gun. It had to fit into New Vegas. It fits it really well, too. This one is a single-action army, which was a gun that served in the US military for a very long time. So this one is a single-action revolver, and I do like that it is modeled as a single-action revolver where you have to cock it back every single time. That is really cool. And you also reload it correctly, too, although you reload it incredibly fast. At very low agility, that seems probably the most realistic that you could reload this gun, because your person is just a little speed demon with this as soon as you open up the gate and start just ejecting the round, putting a new round in, turning the cylinder as you're sliding the ejection rod forward, and then just doing this in such quick succession. It is pretty crazy, especially with like maxed out agility and rapid reload. You reload this thing incredibly fast. The upgrades it gets are really cool too. Having a different cylinder that's actually engraved is a really nice touch for this gun, and having an extended barrel makes sense for this too. The single action army actually came in quite a few different varieties to it, so it fits the Western theme incredibly well. Coming in at our number 7 spot, we have the 44 Magnum. This one makes an appearance once again in Fallout. This one has been around since Fallout 2. I originally thought it was in the first Fallout game, but it's actually not. The Desert Eagle is, but this one isn't. So the 44 Magnum in this game, and from Fallout 3, since this is the same model, is modeled off of a Smith & Wesson Model 29. This is the same exact model that you see in like the Dirty Harry movies, and it is a big, powerful, double-action revolver. It's actually very durable in New Vegas, which makes sense, even more so if you put the different cylinder on it, and you can also put a scope on this one too, which again does kind of make sense. You could put something like a scope on this if you would like. These guns could be used for hunting, and that kind of fits in the Wasteland. It's also one of the few really powerful pistols that you can sneak into casinos do. At least you give 50 sneak, which, yeah, if you had a 44 Magnum, that's a pretty good weapon to be having at close range if you really needed something to put something else down. So 44 Magnum fits really well. It's been a staple in Fallout for quite a long time, and it's very solid in New Vegas. Coming in at my number 6 spot, we have the 45 Auto Pistol. This is modeled after a 1911 pistol, which again has been in military service for a very long time. It was first adopted in 1911, and it didn't really get phased out of service, even in the real world, until like the 80s, pretty much. And even then, it's still in somewhat of a use today. So seeing 1911s, especially around Zion, makes sense since it's in Utah, and this was another design by John Browning, same person who made like the 9mm pistol with the Browning high-powered. Well, sort of that one. That one's a little bit of a different one. But the 1911 being in Utah does make sense since John Browning was also from Utah. You even hear a line from Joshua talking about this, where one from his tribe 400 years ago had made this pistol, and it's still working. So this one is modeled really well. I do like the 1911 quite a bit. It is very cool. This one does also have the better slide on it to make it more durable, and the suppressor on it, which is pretty fitting. Then we move on to our top 5 pistols. Coming in at number 5, we have Maria. This one is the unique 9mm pistol. This one is the one that Benny shoots you with at the very start, and it is very blinged out. It's quite stylish though for what it is. It also fits Benny's character really, really well. Somebody that is very full of himself would have some sort of pistol like this just to show off, especially since it seems like Benny probably doesn't use guns very often. It is also kind of funny that you can get an achievement for using this to kill Benny, which isn't too hard if you like shoot this out of his hand and then pick it up. That works pretty well. You could also reverse pickpocket him and take it and then use it against him as well if you would like. But yeah, this one is just a blinged out Browning high-powered. It looks really cool. It fits the game really well. It's actually very solid in-game. It has really good damage and really good damage per second, as well as an above-average crit modifier. It's also one of the few weapons that counts as a holy weapon towards one of the challenges too, so that's kind of cool. Coming in at number 4, we have the Mysterious Magnum. This one is pretty awesome. So this one is probably the Mysterious Stranger's revolver. There's a good chance that it is. You do get this one from a quest. or you could potentially kill the guy who has it and take it off of him. This one is just a nicer looking 44 Magnum. It's got like a pearl grip on it, it's all silver on it, and it even plays sound effects when you pull it out or when you put it away. Still very powerful. It is substantially more fragile than the 44 though, which is interesting, because like I think the 44 all decked out has about twice the amount of health that this one does. So you still may want to go with that gun, although this gun does have a little bit higher stats than it. Coming in at number 3, we've got a Light Shining in Darkness. This one is Joshua Graham's pistol, and this one fits his character very, very well. This is a unique 1911, sort of. This is actually a Colt Commander, which is basically a 1911 that's just been squished down a little bit. So it holds one less round in it, which would be accurate, as well as you can see that it's a bit shorter, and it does have trench sights in it rather than the standard 1911 sights, which again wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. This is supposed to be used as a very close range pistol, so sights wouldn't honestly be super necessary for it, because at the ranges that you're using it, you're probably just going to pull this out and sort of spam fire it. Unless you're Joshua, in which case he'll just use it as basically a sniper rifle at any range. It does a lot of damage, it has a lot of health, it has a lot of DPS, it's got a very fast reload speed, which is great. The gun itself looks fantastic, as well as it also has some interesting things on it, like the panels on the side seem to be a diamondback rattlesnake skin, or at least the pattern of it, so that's pretty cool. And there's also writing along the side of it in Latin, which translates to something along the lines of, "The light shineth, and the darkness comprehend it not." It's a very fitting gun for Joshua, who is a very religious person, and this gun fits his personality very well. It's also very fitting that it's a 1911. Coming in at number 2, we have Lucky. Lucky is one of the best looking guns in the game in my opinion. This one is a 357 revolver. It's the same as the Colt Single Action Army, but it's been all decked out. This one looks like it's an Old West gambler's revolver. The blacked out metal with the gold engravings on it, and then the pearl white handle, as well as things like the club on the side of it, and I think it's got a spade on the other side. It makes sense. It looks like a gambler's revolver. It's really quite strong in the game too. You can get this right away since it's early on in Prim, as long as you got enough lockpicking. It does really high damage, it shoots really fast, it reloads actually fairly quick. It's all around just a very, very solid gun. It's probably one of my favorite revolvers in the game, and that's why it goes so high up here. And then number 1, to probably nobody's surprise, we have the Ranger Sequoia. The Ranger Sequoia fits Fallout New Vegas incredibly well. This is the signature weapon of the veteran Rangers, so these are the Rangers that have survived a very long time. They are pretty much the elite soldiers, and the Rangers are quite a bit better than something like the elite soldiers of the NCR, it would seem. Even though they are also kind of part of it, it's more of like a joint association, and this one fits them really well. The Rangers have probably the coolest sidearm that I've seen in a very long time in just about any game. This is a gigantic 4570 revolver. It is a double action only revolver, which I guess you could do. I would think you want a single action and double action, but your person just uses a double action, so that would probably be still very unpleasant to use, but it does make sense to, again, to be carrying something like this around throughout the Mojave. If you see something like a Deathclaw, this could definitely put it down. If you see somebody trying to shoot at you at very long range with a rifle, this could also probably work at similar ranges. Probably wouldn't be as effective as a rifle, and this would probably be best used, well, as a secondary option in combination with whatever your primary is. Maybe something like the brush gun, or maybe something like the anti-material rifle. And you can actually get one of these kind of early on. If you go and do Return to Sender and you just play through that one, you'll get access to a Ranger Sequoia if you're willing to steal it, which I certainly am. This gun is really cool. And that'll be all of the pistols in New Vegas ranked. This was actually really difficult, as once I got like the first couple pistols down that looked a little bit awkward to me, the rest of them are really, really solid in design and fit the theme really well. I feel like it's going to be the same way with rifles. Tell me your thoughts on this. What are your favorite pistols? What are your least favorite ones? I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.